your relationships today? Personal, professional. Could they be better? Welcome to Talk Time with Trish, with host Trish Forante and co-host Lisa Stewart. There are so many variables that affect our lives. What makes the difference in our lives is genuine communication. Now, here are your hosts, Trish Forante and Lisa Stewart.
Hello, this is Dr. Lisa Stewart, and welcome to Talk Time with Trish. Our show is about improving communication for both men and women. And today we're going to talk about the question, are relationships disposable? My guest today is Trish Forante. Trish is an accomplished writer and entrepreneur. She consults with executives regarding teamwork and communication, critical incident debriefing, and many other workplace issues. Most of her clients have been with her for more than 15 years, and she attributes this to the integrity of her work. As a relationship expert, she sees the key to effective communication as being genuine, sincere, and authentic. Welcome, Trish. How are you today?
Hi, Dr. Stewart. How are you? I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
I'm doing great. We've reversed roles again today, and Trish is actually one of the hosts of the show, and today she is my guest. And Trish, I know that you've written a book, and the book is on the topic, Are Relationships Disposable? It's entitled Disposable Society, and I've actually gotten the privilege of a sneak preview, but for the purposes of our listeners, Trish, can you tell us a little bit about the book? What's it about?
Well, the book is a story that, since it's a story, it obviously has characters, but it takes the reader through one relationship from start to finish, if you want to call it a finish, in terms of the ups and downs, beginning with courting, and into marriage, and then into the decline of the marriage or the disintegration of the marriage, and all of the experiences and opportunities and lost opportunities to do things differently. And so the book was written with educating in mind. I wanted to be able to do something different from a lot of the books on the shelf right now, and have been for the last 3 to 5 years or so. How to save your marriage, how to save your relationship, practical suggestions to waylay a divorce, those kinds of things. This is a story where the reader can relate or not relate to the characters in the book.
Okay, so it's a story about a couple, about a family. The couple in the marriage makes mistakes, and things go terribly wrong in this relationship. Based on this story and in general, what are some of the typical mistakes that couples make in relationships?
Well, let's back up a minute, because not only did things go terribly wrong in the marriage, but they also go terribly wrong in the courting relationship.
So it started well before they walked down the aisle.
Well, yeah, but the reason why I backed you up a little bit is because that also answers your question. What are the things to look for?
Okay.
To sort of prevent this tragedy, and I call it a tragedy with open eyes and ears, because it is a tragedy. Unfortunately, it's a tragedy that occurs often, very, very often. But the flags, let me talk about that, and let me answer that question. Ignoring telltale signs, digging your head in the sand, not knowing yourself well enough or feeling good enough about yourself well enough to address issues, to address thoughts, to address concerns, to give an opportunity to your partner, whether it's before or during a marriage, to discuss and say, these things bother me. That doesn't mean that you're demanding the other person to change. You're giving the other person an opportunity to take a look. And if that person decides not to change or not to take a look at him or herself, then it's up to you to say, is this okay?
You know, I want to go back because what I heard you say in that your previous statement was self-awareness. You mentioned being aware of your own issues, your own needs. Tell me about that a little bit more. When you talk about self-awareness or being aware of yourself, what do you mean by that? And how do we get there? How do we do that?
Well, self-awareness really is, it's one of those what I consider to be overused phrases, but what it amounts to is being comfortable in your own skin and knowing yourself well enough to know what is okay and what isn't okay. And I'm going to pull here from Dr. Phil, although I'm going to give him credit because I did hear this from him, but I do believe it and I agree with him, and I think that these are some of the most profound words that this gentleman has ever said, which is you teach people how to treat you, period. End of story. You know, that's the beginning and the end. You teach people how to treat you.
You know, I personally love that comment, but does that imply somehow that we are blaming the victim, so to speak? Because I think some people might hear it that way. When you
Who's
teach
the victim?
Well, if one partner is treating the other one badly, and, you know, whether it's abusive or verbally aggressive, and you say...
Or manipulative, we've got to throw that one in there.
Absolutely. Then is the one who's being manipulated or being abused or being hurt, is it their fault because they're teaching the other person how to treat them? I'm sorry to go there, but I have to ask that question because I don't, you know, in this day and age when we're dealing with lots of issues related to domestic violence and, you know, it's really easy to blame the victim. So let's talk. Can you comment on that?
Well, and you raise an excellent point. And my response to that is there are no victims there is no blame. Okay. There is no blame. One thing that I feel very, very strongly about, very strongly, and I deal with this personally and professionally, is blaming does no good. What good comes out of blaming? It's more of taking a look at and examining the problem, the situation, the issue, whatever you want to call it, and taking a look at what's happening and what can be different.
Okay.
So if we go back to, you know, the self-awareness, prior to getting into any relationship, you have to know you. And it's not a staunch dig heels in the sand and say, this is who I am and you will not cross that line and these are my boundaries. No. That's not what I'm saying when I say you need to know you. It's you literally need to know who you are. Who am I? You know, and so if you know you and then you start to engage in a relationship dance, you'll know what feels good and you'll know what doesn't feel good.
Okay, so what you're saying regarding self-awareness is pay attention to your gut reaction. Pay attention to your instincts. Pay attention to how you feel when you're with this person. Is that part of it?
That's part of it, but that's step 2.
Okay.
Step 1 is, again, knowing yourself well enough to be able to recognize that your gut is there for a reason. Your sixth sense, your third eye, whatever you want to call it, however you want to refer to it, I don't really care. It's there for a reason and it's there to serve you. But if you don't trust yourself well enough or enough to recognize that is important, that your gut reation is important.
And I do see that with people just ignoring their gut reaction or second guessing.
Guilty. Every single time in my life, I'm telling you, I can go back to childhood that I have ignored my gut reaction or my sixth sense or my woman's intuition, again, whatever you want to call it, paid a huge price. Huge price.
So the character in the book, the female character in the book, does she ignore her gut instincts?
Oh, many times.
Okay. Okay.
Many times. But there is an evolution with this character. By the end of the book, she is different from who she was in the beginning of the book.
Okay. So, and we'll get to that in a little bit. There are some lessons to be learned here, obviously, and it sounds like she comes full circle.
She'll come full circle in volume 2.
Okay. Ooh, a teaser. I love it. A teaser.
She's still a work in progress.
Let's go back for a minute to talk about, you mentioned self-awareness. You also talked about kind of broaching the other person or reaching out to communicate. I hear that as taking risks and communicating.
Oh, yes. It is taking a huge risk. But remember, it all goes back to self-awareness, and part of self-awareness is confidence. And so that sort of is a pillow or a cushion to being able or willing to take risks. And what I mean by taking risks is being able to or willing to expose yourself to potential rejection, being able to hear it's over, or it's never really begun, or we're done. It's being willing to hear those words, and no one likes hearing them. So I'm not saying that we should be smiling and going, okay. And it's
so it's gonna hurt if you hear those words.
Sure, of course it is. Sure.
But again, part of the trick in being self-aware and strong and confident is to be able to know yourself well enough to know that you can handle it and survive it.
To know yourself, yes. But to know yourself, if I could sort of back that statement up just a bit, it's to know yourself well enough to know that communication must occur all the time, not just moving to things started out well and then they sort of took a curve and then they went down the winding road and now we're at a place where we have to have those infamous words, can we talk? Or I've got something to talk to you about, or do you have a minute? Those are precursors to yuck. And so if you're communicating all the way through your relationship, if that's occurring, the ability to take a risk and say, what's going on, what's happening to us, what can I do differently, how am I not meeting your needs? While it's not always an easy thing to do, it's certainly much easier. And you don't get blindsided. It significantly reduces the likelihood of being blindsided.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is that we're proactive, that we jump in and, again, take the risk, connect, and deal with the consequence, deal with the emotional fallout.
Yeah, on a regular basis, not when things go south, but on a regular basis in the very beginning. And that becomes a telltale flag. A huge telltale flag is if communication doesn't work on the front end, what makes you think it's going to work on the back end?
Words to live by. Well, it's time to take a short break, and this is Dr. Lisa Stewart, and my guest today is Trish Forante. You're listening to Talk Time with Trish on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel.
Better communication means better relationships in every sense of the word. When you communicate more effectively and interact more effectively, your life is lived more effectively. Tune in to Talk Time with Trish, featuring host Trish Forante and co-host Lisa Stewart. Our program is all about the human element. We are all comprised of parts and stuff that we may be aware of or others may be aware of. When we become aware of what others are aware of, it means more to us. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.